Alan Foster wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the crystal pool. The water glowed soft blue under the strange sky of Sanctuary World Theta 9. He had been working here for 2 years now, protecting the last safe place for draconids in the entire galaxy. The draconids were special. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, with scales that shined like metal and wings that could spread wider than a spaceship. But they were not monsters. They were kind, intelligent, and could speak into your mind without making a sound. Alan had learned to love them like family. Only 47 adult draconids were left alive. That was all. In a galaxy with trillions of creatures, only 47 of these beautiful beings remained. Alan's job was simple. Keep them safe. Make sure nobody hurt them. Make sure the nesting grounds stayed protected. He knelt by the water and took a sample. Everything looked normal. The purple and orange sun was rising higher now, warming the silver grass around him. It was peaceful here. Quiet. Then he heard the scream. Alan's head snapped up. His heart jumped into his throat. That sound was not from an adult draconid. It was too high. Too small. That was a baby crying out in fear. He dropped everything and ran. His boots pounded against the ground as he pushed through the forest of tall blue trees. The screaming got louder with every step. It was coming from the eastern clearing, near the hatching caves. Alan burst through the trees and froze. 5 people in black armor stood in a circle. In the middle of them was a draconid hatchling, no bigger than a large dog. Its wings were tangled in a glowing energy net. The little creature thrashed and cried, its scales flashing pink and gold in the sunlight. "Stop moving, you little pest," one of the armored figures said. He kicked dirt at the hatchling. Poachers. Alan's blood turned to ice. These people hunted rare species and sold them to the highest bidder. A draconid hatchling would be worth millions on the black market. Maybe more. He reached for his communicator, but the screen showed only red error messages. They were jamming all signals. Nobody could hear him. Nobody would come to help. The hatchling's eyes found Alan through the trees. They were large and golden, filled with terror. For just a moment, Alan felt something brush against his mind. Soft, desperate. Like a child reaching for a parent in the dark. The little draconid was asking him for help. Alan had no weapons. The nearest ranger station was 40 miles away. His emergency beacon would not work through the jamming signal. He was alone. But he could not walk away. He stepped out from the trees. "Let it go," Alan said. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. The 5 poachers turned to look at him. The leader was a tall man with scars on his face. He laughed. "A human? Out here all alone?" He shook his head. "You must be the stupidest person in the galaxy." "That creature is protected by galactic conservation law," Alan said. "If you take it, you will spend the rest of your life in prison." "We will spend the rest of our lives rich," another poacher said. "Now be smart and walk away." The leader raised a plasma rifle and pointed it at Alan. "Last chance, human. This is not your problem." Alan looked at the hatchling again. The little creature had stopped struggling. It was staring at him with those big golden eyes. Alan felt that touch in his mind again, stronger now. It was not words exactly. It was feelings. Trust. Hope. Belief that he would help. The hatchling thought Alan could save it. "I cannot walk away," Alan said quietly. The leader sighed. "Then you are choosing to die." Alan charged. He was not a soldier. He had never been in a real fight in his life. But fear and love can make people do impossible things. He slammed into the nearest poacher and grabbed for the control device on the man's belt. A fist crashed into Alan's face. Pain exploded behind his eyes. Another blow hit his stomach, knocking the air from his lungs. Someone kicked him in the ribs. He heard a crack and felt sharp pain spread through his chest. But his fingers found the control device. He pressed every button he could reach. The energy net around the hatchling flickered and died. "Fly." Alan screamed out loud and in his mind. "Go. Run." The little draconid spread its wings and shot into the sky like a golden arrow. It was fast. So fast. Within seconds it was just a speck against the orange clouds. "No," the leader roared. "You idiot. That was 30 million credits." Alan tried to stand, but a boot slammed into his chest and knocked him back down. He lay in the silver grass, gasping for air. Everything hurt. The leader stood over him, face twisted with rage. He aimed the plasma rifle at Alan's chest. "You stupid, worthless human," the man snarled. "It was just an animal." Alan looked up at him. Blood ran into his eyes, but he smiled anyway. "It was a child," he whispered. The rifle fired. White light. Burning pain. Alan's whole body went numb. He could not feel his legs. Could not feel his arms. There was only fire in his chest and the taste of metal in his mouth. He fell backward. The sky above him was so beautiful. Purple and orange and pink all swirling together. He had never noticed how pretty it was before. "Leave him," the leader said. "He will be dead in 2 minutes. Let us go before more rangers show up." Alan heard footsteps walking away. Heard the sound of a ship engine starting in the distance. The poachers were leaving. They had failed to catch the hatchling, but they did not care enough to finish killing him properly. It did not matter anyway. Alan knew he was dying. His chest felt cold now. What? He could not breathe right. Each breath was harder than the last. But the hatchling was safe. That was all that mattered. Alan's vision started to go dark at the edges. The pretty sky was fading to black. Then he felt something land beside him. Through blurry eyes he saw the hatchling. It had come back. The little creature pressed its snout against his hand and made soft crying sounds. Tears fell from its golden eyes onto Alan's arm. "You should run," Alan tried to say, but no sound came out. Only blood. The hatchling threw its head back and cried out. Not a scream. A call. A song. Alan's hearing was fading, but he felt vibrations through the ground. Something big was coming. Several big things. 3 massive shadows fell over him as adult draconids landed around them. Their scales were deep blue and silver, shining like metal in the sunlight. One of them was bigger than the others, with golden eyes that looked older than stars. This was Elder Kor, the oldest living draconid, the leader of his people. Alan felt the elder's mind touch his. It was warm, set, gentle. He saw images in his head. Not words. Pictures and feelings. He understood somehow. The elder was thanking him, honoring him, recognizing what he had done. Alan wanted to say it was okay, that he would do it again. But his body would not work anymore. The hatchling pressed closer, shaking with sobs. Its small body was warm against Alan's cold hand. Elder Kor's voice filled Alan's fading mind. It was deep and ancient and kind. "You gave everything for our youngest. Your spirit burns brighter than any we have seen in centuries. My grandchild has bonded with you. This has not happened in 10,000 years." Alan's heart beat once, twice, weaker each time. "We cannot save you as you are now. Your body is too broken. But there is another way. An old way. A sacred way. We can offer you something that has been offered only 7 times in all our history." The world went completely dark. Alan could not see, could not hear, could not feel anything except that warm presence in his mind. "Sleep now, protector. When you wake you will be different. You will be more. You will be what the galaxy needs." Alan Foster's last thought was simple and clear. Worth it. Was all worth it. His heart stopped beating. The hatchling cried out in grief. The adult draconids began to sing, a sound like the birth and death of stars. They lifted Alan's broken body with their minds and carried him gently toward the sacred hollow deep in the mountains. Death was not always the end. Not for protectors. Not for those who sacrificed everything for innocence. Not for those chosen by dragons. Alan woke up screaming. His eyes flew open and he gasped for air like a drowning man breaking the surface of water. His hands grabbed at his chest, searching for the wound, the burning hole where the plasma bolt had torn through him. There was nothing. Just smooth skin. He sat up fast, too fast, and his head spun. Where was he? This was not the medical station. This was not anywhere he recognized. The room around him glowed with soft silver light. The walls were made of crystal that pulsed like a heartbeat. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing blue and gold. The air smelled sweet, like flowers he had never seen before. Alan looked down at himself. He was wearing simple white clothes he did not remember putting on. His hands looked the same, but something felt different. He felt strong. More alive than he had ever felt in his entire life. "You are awake." The voice filled his head, not his ears. Alan jumped and spun around. Elder Kor stood at the entrance to the chamber. The massive draconid had to duck his head to fit through the doorway. His blue scales caught the light and shined like metal. "Where am I?" Alan asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Stronger. Clear. "The sacred hollow," Elder Kor said. His mouth did not move, but Alan heard the words perfectly in his mind. "You have been asleep for 3 months. 3 months." Alan stood up and again he moved too fast. His body felt lighter, stronger. "I should be dead. That shot hit me square in the chest. I felt my heart stop." "You did die," Elder Kor said simply. "We brought you back." Alan stared at the elder. "That is not possible." "It is very rare," Elder Kor agreed. "But it is possible." Our ancestors created something long ago, in the old days when our people were many and the galaxy was young. They called it the Guardian Protocol. It was designed for protectors. For those who would give their lives to save ours. Alan's legs felt weak. He sat down on the crystal bed behind him. I do not understand. You died protecting my grandchild, Elder Core said. His golden eyes were gentle. Your sacrifice created a bond. A connection between your spirit and hers. When you fell, she felt it. She called out and the bond formed. It has not happened in 10,000 years, but the old magic still works. Magic? Alan shook his head. You are talking about science, right? Technology? Your people make a difference between the two. We do not. Elder Core moved closer. You were broken beyond any normal healing. Your heart had stopped. Your blood had left your body. But your spirit remained held here by the bond. So we used the old way. We rebuilt you. Alan looked at his hands again. They looked normal, but he could feel power in them. Like electricity running just under his skin. Rebuilt me how? The sacred hollow contains technology from before even my time, Elder Core explained. It can take what remains of a protector and make them whole again. Better than whole. Stronger. Faster. Harder to kill. The Elder paused. Immortal. The word hung in the air like a weight. Immortal? Alan whispered. You mean I will not age? You will not age. You will not sicken. You will heal from almost any wound. Elder Core's eyes grew sad. But you will also never be fully human again. The bond with my grandchild is permanent. You will feel what she feels. Know where she is always. And you will carry a purpose in your heart that you cannot ignore. Before Alan could respond, he felt something. A warmth in his chest. Not painful. Comfortable. Like sitting near a fire on a cold night. And with that warmth came feelings that were not his own. Joy. Relief. Love. She knows you are awake, Elder Core said softly. The hatchling? Alan asked. Her name is Isla. And she has been waiting for you every day. As if summoned by her name, a golden blur shot into the chamber. The small draconid was bigger now, the size of a horse instead of a dog. Her scales had deepened to a rich gold color, and her wings were stronger. But her eyes were the same. Large and golden and full of intelligence. Isla crashed into Alan, knocking him back onto the bed. She pressed her head against his chest and made a sound like a cat purring, but deeper. Her mind touched his, and suddenly Alan was flooded with images and feelings. He saw himself through her eyes. Saw the moment he had charged the poachers. Felt her terror turn to hope. Felt her grief when he fell. And then felt her joy when the elders told her he would return. I am okay, Alan said out loud, even though he knew she could hear his thoughts. You are safe. That is all that matters. Isla pulled back and looked at him. She chirped once, then licked his face with a rough tongue. Alan laughed. Felt good to laugh. He had not expected to ever laugh again. The bond between you is strong, Elder Core said. Stronger than any we have seen before. You will always know if she is in danger. And she will always know where you are. You are connected now. For the rest of your very long life. Alan scratched behind Isla's ears the way he had learned she liked. The young draconid made happy sounds and leaned into his hand. What happens now? He asked. Elder Core was quiet for a moment. That is your choice. The Guardian Protocol does not control you. It only gives you power and purpose. You can choose to return to your old life if you wish. Go back to Earth. Be with your own kind. But. Alan heard the unspoken word. But you will feel the call, Elder Core said. You are a guardian now. Protector of the innocent. Defender of the threatened. When you sense danger to those who cannot protect themselves, you will feel it like a fire in your blood. Ignoring it will be difficult. Alan stood up. Isla moved with him, staying close to his side. He walked to the crystal wall and looked out. Through the transparent surface, he could see the sanctuary world stretching out below. Silver forests. Purple mountains. Orange sky. What am I protecting exactly? Alan asked. Just draconids? All endangered species, Elder Core said. All innocent life that faces extinction or harm. The Guardian Protocol was created when our people were strong and many. We used it to protect others who could not protect themselves. That is the purpose it will burn into your heart. Alan felt it then. Like Elder Core said. A warmth in his chest. A calling. A certainty that this was what he was meant to do. I felt weak before, Alan said quietly. I was just one man with a scanner and a radio. I could not stop those poachers. Could barely slow them down. You are not weak anymore, Elder Core said. Test your strength. Alan looked around and saw a metal bar near the entrance, used for hanging tools. It was thick, the kind that would take a strong man effort to bend. He walked over and picked it up with one hand. It felt light as paper. He squeezed and the metal crumpled like clay in his fingers. Alan dropped it, shocked. How strong am I? Strong enough, Elder Core said. And you heal fast. Watch. The Elder moved faster than Alan could follow. One claw lashed out and cut a line across Alan's forearm. Blood welled up. Alan gasped and grabbed his arm. But even as he watched, the wound began to close. Skin knitted back together like invisible hands were sewing it shut. In 30 seconds there was only a thin pink line. In another 30 seconds even that was gone. I am a monster, Alan whispered. You are a guardian, Elder Core corrected gently. There is a difference. Monsters destroy. Guardians protect. Isla pressed against Alan's leg, offering comfort. He could feel her faith in him through the bond. She did not see a monster. She saw a hero. Her hero. Alan took a deep breath. How long will I live? The other guardians lived for thousands of years, Elder Core said. You will likely do the same. Perhaps longer. Thousands of years. Alan tried to imagine it and could not. Everyone he knew would grow old and die. His friends. His family back on Earth. All of them would be dust while he remained. I know this is hard, Elder Core said, his mental voice full of compassion. You did not ask for this. But you earned it through sacrifice. And the galaxy needs protectors. Now more than ever. Alan looked down at Isla. She looked back up at him with complete trust. This small creature had bonded her entire existence to his. She needed him. And there were others out there who needed him too. Other innocents facing danger. Other creatures hunted by people who saw them as nothing but profit. Alan had died trying to save one. Now he had the power to save thousands. Teach me, Alan said, turning to Elder Core. Teach me everything I need to know. How to fight. How to track. How to use these abilities. Elder Core's eyes glowed brighter. You accept the calling? Yes, Alan said. The word felt right in his mouth. I accept. Isla chirped happily and spread her wings. Elder Core bowed his massive head in respect. Then your training begins tomorrow, the Elder said. Rest tonight. Say goodbye to the man you were. Tomorrow you become something new. That night, Alan stood outside the sacred hollow and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, innocent beings were in danger. Somewhere out there, creatures faced extinction at the hands of greed and cruelty. He could feel it calling to him. A purpose as clear as his own heartbeat. Alan Foster had died a normal man. He had been reborn as a guardian. And the galaxy would never be the same. The cargo ship Bleeding Star drifted through the outer reach, far from any patrol routes. Inside its holding bay, 30 cages lined the walls. Each cage held a different creature. Some whimpered. Some hissed. All of them were terrified. Captain Wade Brennan sat in his command chair, counting his money before he even had it. 3 weeks until we reach the Korvax market, he told his crew. Then we all retire rich. His first officer laughed. That crystal ape alone will fetch 5 million. And those singing birds from Melodia? 10 million for the set. Wade smiled. This was his biggest haul yet. Rare species from 12 different worlds, all crammed into his ship. The Galactic Conservation Corps had no idea he was out here. By the time they noticed these creatures were missing, he would be long gone. Sir, his navigator said suddenly. We have a proximity alert. Wade frowned. What? There is nothing out here for 20 light years. Something just attached to our hull. Airlock 3. Wade's blood went cold. Battle stations. Now. His crew scrambled, grabbing weapons and rushing to defensive positions. Wade pulled up the security cameras for Airlock 3. The screen showed nothing. Just empty space. Then the airlock door exploded inward. A figure stepped through the smoke and flames. Tall. Human-shaped. Wearing a long dark coat that moved like liquid shadow. His face was covered by a simple black mask, but his eyes glowed with a faint silver light. The Warden, Wade whispered in horror. He had heard the stories. Every smuggler and poacher in the galaxy had heard the stories. A ghost who appeared from nowhere. A monster who could not be killed. A demon who hunted hunters. Wade had thought they were just stories. The Warden walked down the corridor toward the cargo bay. 3 of Wade's crew opened fire with plasma rifles. The bolts hit the figure square in the chest. He stumbled back 1 step. Then he kept walking. The wounds in his coat sealed themselves. Smoke rose from his chest, but no blood came out. In seconds it was as if he had never been shot at all. Fall back. Wade screamed. Fall back to the cargo bay. The crew ran. The warden followed at a steady walk, not hurrying. He did not need to hurry. There was nowhere for them to go. Wade and his remaining crew barricaded themselves in the cargo bay. Around them, the caged creatures watched with wide eyes. Some of them had stopped crying. It was like they knew something was about to change. The cargo bay door groaned. Then it tore off its hinges like paper and crashed to the floor. The warden stepped inside. "Stay back." Wade aimed his rifle with shaking hands. "I am warning you." The warden tilted his head. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and cold. "You have 30 seconds to open those cages. After that, I will open them myself. And I will use your bodies to do it. You cannot do this." Wade shouted. "These creatures are legal salvage. We found them on unprotected worlds." 20 seconds. Wade fired. The plasma bolt hit the warden in the shoulder. The coat burned. Flesh sizzled. The warden did not even flinch. The wound healed before Wade's eyes. Skin grew back like watching a video in reverse. 10 seconds. Wade's crew threw down their weapons and ran for the escape pods. Wade stood alone, his rifle shaking in his hands. 5 seconds. Okay. Wade dropped his weapon and pulled out the control device. With trembling fingers he pressed the release button. All 30 cages opened at once. The creatures did not attack. They did not flee. They simply sat there watching the warden like he was something holy. The warden moved through the cargo bay, checking each creature. He was gentle with them, his glowing eyes soft as he examined injuries and offered silent comfort. A small furry creature from Velios crawled into his arms and made a purring sound. He held it carefully. "You are a monster," Wade whispered. The warden looked at him. "No. You are the monster. You steal children from their families. You sell thinking beings like objects. You cause pain for profit." He set the small creature down gently. "I am just the consequences." "What are you going to do to me?" Wade asked. "I am going to take your ship. I am going to return every creature here to their home worlds. And I am going to make sure you never hurt another living being again." "You are going to kill me?" The warden was quiet for a moment. "No. Death would be too easy. You are going to stand trial. The Conservation Corps has wanted you for 6 years. They will be very happy to finally meet you." The warden pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Somewhere in the distance, Wade heard ship engines approaching. The Conservation Corps. He had been calling them. "How did you find me?" Wade asked quietly. "We were in the middle of nowhere." The warden looked up at the ceiling as if seeing through it to the stars beyond. "I felt them crying out. All of them. Every innocent creature that suffers calls to me. I will always come. No matter how far. No matter how hidden you think you are." Wade felt his legs give out. He fell to his knees. "Who are you?" "I am the warden," the figure said simply. "And you should have chosen a different life." 20 minutes later, Conservation Corps ships surrounded the bleeding star. They found Wade Brennan tied up in his own cargo bay, babbling about ghosts and demons. They found 30 rare creatures, all unharmed and calm. But they did not find the warden. He was already gone. 3 systems away, Alan Foster sat on a cliff edge and watched the sunset. His mask was off now, his coat folded beside him. He looked young still, exactly as he had 7 years ago. He would look this way for centuries to come. Isla landed beside him, her wings stirring up dust. She was magnificent now, nearly as large as Elder Core. Her golden scales shined like a second sun. She had become strong and beautiful and fierce. "Another job done," Alan said quietly. Isla pressed her head against his shoulder. Through their bond, he felt her pride in him. Her love. Her certainty that what he did mattered. But Alan felt tired. Not physically. His body never got tired anymore. But his heart was heavy. 7 years of hunting the worst people in the galaxy. 7 years of seeing cruelty and greed and violence. Sometimes he wondered if he was making any difference at all. He saved hundreds of creatures, but thousands more were still in danger. He stopped dozens of poachers, but hundreds more took their place. "Am I doing enough?" Alan asked. Isla's answer came as feelings, not words. She showed him the creatures he had saved. The families reunited. The species brought back from the edge of extinction. Every life he touched mattered. Every rescue changed the world for someone. Alan smiled sadly. "You always know what to say." A soft chime came from his pocket. Alan pulled out a small device, one of the few pieces of technology he carried. It was connected to the Conservation Corps network, feeding him information about endangered species and threats across the galaxy. 3 new alerts blinked on the screen. A trafficking ring operating in the Kilo system. A poaching operation targeting the last breeding ground of crystal whales on Aquaria Prime. An illegal fighting ring using captured predators from protected worlds. Alan stared at the alerts. 3 more jobs. 3 more fights. 3 more chances to make a difference. He was so tired. But the fire in his chest burned bright. The calling Elder Core had warned him about. It would not let him rest. Would not let him look away. Somewhere out there, innocents were suffering. And he had the power to stop it. Alan stood up and put his mask back on. He pulled his coat around his shoulders. The warden looked out at the stars with glowing silver eyes. "Which one first?" he asked Isla. She stood beside him and spread her wings. Her mental voice was clear and strong. "The one where they need us most." Alan checked the alerts again. The fighting ring. They were using creatures that were still alive, still suffering. Still being hurt for entertainment. "Then that is where we go," Alan said. He climbed onto Isla's back. She was strong enough now to carry him between the stars. Together they were unstoppable. The Guardian and his bonded Draconid. Isla launched into the sky, her wings carrying them higher and higher. Within minutes they broke atmosphere. Within an hour they would reach the edge of the system. Within a day they would arrive at the fighting ring. And then the warden would teach them the same lesson he taught everyone. Hurting the innocent has consequences. Down below on that cargo ship, Wade Brennan was being loaded into a prison transport. He kept muttering to the officers about demons and ghosts. They thought he was crazy. But other criminals heard his story. It spread through the underworld like wildfire. The warden had struck again. The warden was real. The warden could not be stopped. Some laughed. Some were afraid. Some refused to believe. But deep down, every poacher and smuggler and trafficker felt the same cold fear. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. Someone who moved like a ghost. Someone who could not be killed. Someone who always found you no matter where you hid. They called him the warden. They called him a monster. They called him a legend. But the creatures he saved had a different name for him. They called him Hope. And hope, once lit, is very hard to kill. Alan and Isla disappeared into the stars, leaving no trace except whispers and fear and 30 rescued lives that would tell their children about the day they were saved by something impossible. The galaxy was vast. Evil was everywhere. But so was he. And he would never stop fighting. Not for 7 years. Not for 700. Not for 7,000. He was the warden. And his watch had only just begun. Morris Cade stared at the holographic image floating above his desk. It showed a man in a black mask and coat walking through a cargo bay. The footage was grainy, taken from a security camera before it was destroyed. But Cade knew that walk. He had seen it before. 7 years ago, on Sanctuary World Theta 9, he had shot a wildlife specialist named Alan Foster. He had watched the man fall. Watched him bleed out in the silver grass. Watched him die. Yet here was that same man, alive and hunting poachers across the galaxy. "It cannot be," Cade whispered. But deep in his gut he knew it was true. His second in command, a scarred woman named Vera, leaned against the wall. The timestamps match. Every appearance of this warden starts exactly 3 months after you killed that human on Theta 9. Cade's hands curled into fists. He should be dead. Maybe he has a brother. A twin. No. Cade shook his head. Look at how he moves. Look at his height. His build. That is Alan Foster. Somehow he survived. And now he is hunting us. Vera pushed off the wall. The warden has cost us millions. Freed our cargo. Sent 30 of our people to prison. If this is personal for him, we need to end it. Cade nodded slowly. An idea was forming in his mind. A dark, terrible idea. The Draconids brought him back somehow. Which means he still cares about them. He smiled coldly. We are going to use that against him. How? We are going to hit him where it hurts most. That sanctuary world. We are going to take everything he died protecting. Cade stood up. And when he comes to stop us, we are going to be ready. Across the galaxy, Officer Claire Bennett of the Galactic Conservation Corps sat in her small ship and reviewed files. She had been tracking the warden for 2 years now. Not to arrest him. To understand him. Every criminal he stopped, she interviewed. Every creature he saved, she documented. The pattern was clear. The warden only appeared when endangered species were threatened. He never killed unless he had no choice. He always made sure the creatures were safe before he left. But who was he? And why did he do this? Claire had spent months following his trail. She had studied every security recording, every witness statement, every rumor. And slowly a picture emerged. The warden was not cruel. He was not a vigilante seeking glory. He was something else. Something driven by purpose so strong it bordered on obsession. And Claire thought she knew why. She pulled up an old file. A report from 7 years ago. A wildlife specialist named Alan Foster had been killed by poachers on Theta 9. His body had been taken by the Draconids for traditional burial rites. It was never recovered. 3 months later, the warden appeared for the first time. Claire had checked the dates, checked the locations, checked everything. The evidence pointed to one impossible conclusion. Alan Foster and the warden were the same person. But how? The report said he had died. The medical scans showed his heart had stopped. How do you come back from that? Claire needed answers. And she knew where to find them. She set course for Theta 9. On a small moon called Haven, Alan stood in the middle of a refugee camp. Around him, dozens of different species lived in temporary shelters. All of them were endangered. All of them had been rescued from traffickers, poachers, or habitat destruction. This was Alan's sanctuary. A place he had built over the years. A safe haven for creatures with nowhere else to go. An old Valkyrian, a species that looked like walking trees, approached him. "Warden, thank you for the supplies. The young ones are eating well now." Alan nodded. He did not smile. He had not smiled in a long time. "If you need anything else, let me know." The Valkyrian studied him with ancient eyes. "You look tired, friend. When was the last time you rested?" "I do not need rest," Alan said quietly. "My body does not get tired." "I did not ask about your body. I asked about you." Alan turned away. He did not want to have this conversation. "I have work to do." He walked through the camp, checking supplies and making sure everyone was safe. But the Valkyrian's words stayed with him. He was tired. Not physically, but in his soul. 7 years of fighting. 7 years of violence and cruelty. 7 years of seeing the worst the galaxy had to offer. It was changing him. Making him harder. Colder. Sometimes he looked in the mirror and did not recognize the person staring back. Isla found him sitting alone near the edge of the camp. She had grown even larger now, her scales gleaming in the moonlight. She laid down beside him and rested her massive head on his lap. "I am fine," Alan lied. Isla's feelings flooded through their bond. She knew he was not fine. She knew he was hurting. She showed him images of the creatures he had saved, the lives he had changed, the good he had done. But Alan shook his head. "For every one I saved, 10 more are taken. For every poacher I stop, 20 more appear. What is the point, Isla? What am I actually changing?" Isla's response was simple and pure. "You are changing everything for the ones you save." Before Alan could respond, alarms blared across the camp. Red lights flashed from the perimeter sensors. Alan jumped to his feet. "What is happening?" His communication device crackled. "Warden, we have multiple ships approaching. Big ones. They are not friendly." Alan's blood turned cold. "Evacuate everyone. Now." He ran to the command center with Isla at his side. The security screens showed 15 heavily armed ships dropping out of hyperspace. They formed a blockade around the moon. Escape was impossible. "They found us," Alan whispered. A holographic communication request appeared on his screen. Alan answered it. Morris Cade's face filled the display. He was older now, his scars deeper, but Alan recognized him instantly. The man who had killed him 7 years ago. "Hello, Alan Foster," Cade said with a cruel smile. "Or should I call you the Warden?" Alan said nothing. His hands clenched into fists. "Surprised? You should not be. I'm very good at my job. And you have been very bad for business." Cade leaned forward. "So I decided to return the favor. You cost me millions. I am going to cost you everything. If you hurt anyone here, I will." "You will what?" Cade interrupted. "I have studied you, Warden. I know how you operate. You will come try to save them. And when you do, we will be waiting." He gestured to someone off-screen. "I brought friends. Lots of them. Heavy weapons. Trap fields. Nerve gas. Everything designed specifically to kill something that does not die easily." Alan's mind raced. He could fight, but not 15 ships worth of soldiers. Not while also protecting hundreds of refugees. They would be caught in the crossfire. "What do you want?" Alan asked quietly. "Simple. You surrender. Come aboard my ship peacefully. Let us finish what we started 7 years ago." Cade's smile widened. "Do that and I will leave this moon alone. Refuse and we will burn it to ash. Every creature here will die. And it will be your fault." Alan looked around the command center. At the faces watching him with fear and hope. These creatures trusted him. believed in him. How could he abandon them? But how could he let them die? You have 1 hour, Kate said. Choose wisely. The hologram cut out. Isla growled, smoke rising from her nostrils. Through their bond, Alan felt her rage. Her desire to fight. To burn those ships from the sky. But Alan knew better. Cade was prepared this time. This was not a random cargo ship with a scared crew. This was a trap designed specifically for him. If he fought, people would die. Innocent people. The very beings he had sworn to protect. But if he surrendered, Cade would kill him. Slowly. Painfully. As revenge for all the money and people the warden had cost him. Alan looked out the window at the camp below. Children played near the shelters, unaware of the danger. Families huddled together. The old Valkyrian was helping distribute food. All of them depending on him to keep them safe. Sir, one of his staff said quietly. What do we do? Alan closed his eyes. For 7 years he had been the hunter. Always on the attack. Always in control. But now the tables had turned. Now he was the prey. And he had no idea how to save everyone. A ship appeared on the sensors. Small. Fast. Not part of Cade's fleet. It was broadcasting Conservation Corps identification codes. Alan's communication device buzzed. A woman's voice came through. Warden, this is Officer Claire Bennett of the Galactic Conservation Corps. I know who you are, Alan Foster. And I know you are in trouble. I am coming to help. Alan stared at the screen in shock. The Conservation Corps was hunting him. Why would one of their officers offer to help? How do I know this is not a trick? Alan asked. You do not, Claire said honestly. But you do not have many options right now. Cade has you trapped. You cannot fight him alone. But maybe you do not have to be alone. Let me land. Let me help. Alan looked at Isla. She met his eyes and through their bond he felt her thoughts. Trust her. We need allies. Alan had been alone for so long. Fighting by himself. Trusting no one. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe he was never meant to do this alone. All right, Alan said. Land at coordinates I am sending you. But if this is a trap, Officer Bennett, you will regret it. Understood, Warden. The small ship descended toward the moon. Alan watched it come, his heart heavy with hope and fear. Cade had found him. Had trapped him. Had put everything he cared about in danger. But for the first time in 7 years, Alan Foster was not facing his enemies alone. The question was, would it be enough? The clock was ticking. 58 minutes until Cade's deadline. 58 minutes to find a way to save everyone. Alan looked at Isla. At the camp below. At the approaching Conservation Corps ship. He had died once protecting innocents. He would do it again if he had to. But this time he was going to make sure they survived. Even if it cost him everything. Claire Bennett's ship touched down in the middle of the refugee camp. Alan watched from a distance as the ramp lowered and a woman in a Conservation Corps uniform stepped out. She was young, maybe 30, with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. You are really him, Claire said as she approached. Alan Foster. The man who died 7 years ago. I did die, Alan said quietly. I just did not stay dead. Claire studied him carefully. The Draconids brought you back somehow. Made you into this. She gestured at him. A guardian. You know about that? I have been researching Draconid history for months. Found old records buried in archives. Stories about protectors who came back from death with incredible powers. Claire stepped closer. You are not the first guardian, Alan. But you might be the last. None of this matters right now, Alan said, turning to look at the ships surrounding the moon. Cade is going to attack in 50 minutes. I need to evacuate these people. Where will they go? Claire asked. He has the moon blockaded. Nothing gets in or out. Alan's jaw tightened. She was right. The refugees were trapped. Then I will surrender. It is the only way to keep them safe. That is suicide. I can heal from almost anything. Maybe I can survive whatever Cade does to me. Maybe is not good enough, Claire said firmly. And surrendering solves nothing. The moment you are on his ship, he will attack anyway. Men like Cade do not keep their word. Alan knew she was right. But what choice did he have? Then what do you suggest? Claire pulled out a small device. I have been monitoring Cade's communications. His ships are powerful but they are old. And they are all connected to a central command network. She showed Alan the readout. If we can hack that network, we can disable their weapon systems. Maybe even their engines. Can you do that? I can try. But I will need time. And Cade will notice when his systems start failing. Claire looked at him. Someone will need to keep him distracted. Alan understood. You want me to fight them. Not fight. Delay. Make them focus on you while I work. Claire handed him a small communicator. This is encrypted. I will tell you when the hack is complete. But Alan, even with disabled weapons, you will be facing hundreds of soldiers. You cannot win alone. I am not alone, Alan said, looking at Isla. The massive draconid growled low in her throat. Her golden scales rippled with barely contained fury. Through their bond, Alan felt her readiness to fight. To burn anyone who threatened their family. That is still only 2 of you against an army, Claire said. Before Alan could respond, the sky above them rippled. A dozen shapes appeared, breaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. They were draconids. Large ones. Led by the biggest of them all. Elder Kor landed in the center of the camp, his blue scales gleaming in the moonlight. Behind him came other elders, each one ancient and powerful. Their presence made the ground shake. You called for help, young guardian? Elder Kor's voice filled Alan's mind. We came. Alan felt something break inside his chest. Something that had been holding him together for 7 years. You should not be here. This is my fight. It was never just your fight, Elder Kor said gently. You died protecting one of us. You have spent years protecting all of us. Did you think we would abandon you when you needed us most? Isla ran to her grandfather and pressed her head against his massive chest. Through the bond, Alan felt her relief and joy. Her family had come. Alan looked at the gathered draconids. At Claire. At the refugees watching with hope in their eyes. For so long he had carried this burden alone. Had thought he had to face every threat by himself. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe being a guardian did not mean being alone. Thank you, Alan said quietly. We fight together, Elder Kor said. As it should be. The communicator on Alan's belt crackled. Cade's voice came through, cold and mocking. Your hour is up, Warden. What is your answer? Alan looked at Claire. She nodded and began working on her hacking device. He looked at Elder Kor and the other draconids. They spread their wings ready for battle. Alan activated his communicator. My answer is no. Then you have chosen death for everyone on that moon. No, Alan said calmly. I have chosen to fight. Something you have never understood, Cade. You hunt the weak because you are a coward. You hide behind weapons and numbers because without them you are nothing. Big words from a dead man, Cade snarled. All ships, open fire. Burn that moon to ash. The 15 ships powered up their weapons. Massive cannons rotated toward the surface. Energy built in their barrels, ready to unleash devastation. But nothing happened. On his ship, Cade stared at his control panel in confusion. What is going on? Why are we not firing? Sir, our weapons are offline, his weapons officer said. The whole network just crashed. Then use manual controls. Manual controls are not responding either. Sir, someone is in our system. Cade's face turned red with rage. The Warden. He hacked us. Alan smiled behind his mask. Claire had done it. The ships were defenseless now. But Cade still had soldiers. Lots of them. All ground forces deploy now. Cade screamed into his communicator. Kill everything on that moon. Transport ships dropped from the larger vessels. Hundreds of armored soldiers poured out, their boots hitting the ground like thunder. They formed ranks and began marching toward the refugee camp. Alan stepped forward to meet them. Islam moved to his right side. Elder Kor moved to his left. The other draconids spread out in a line behind them. For the innocent, Alan said quietly. For the innocent, Elder Kor's voice echoed in his mind. The battle began. Alan moved like lightning. His enhanced speed and strength made him a blur to normal eyes. He tore through the first line of soldiers, disarming them and knocking them unconscious. He did not kill unless he had no choice. These were just hired muscle. Desperate people taking desperate jobs. But he showed no mercy to those who tried to hurt the refugees. Isla flew overhead, breathing fire that melted weapons and scattered formations. She was magnificent and terrible, a golden dragon bringing justice from the sky. Elder Kor and the other draconids used their telepathic powers to confuse and disorient the soldiers. Men dropped their weapons and ran in panic. Others fell to their knees, overwhelmed by visions of all the creatures they had hurt. It was not a fair fight. The soldiers were trained and armed, but they were facing something beyond their understanding. They were facing guardians. On his ship, Cade watched in horror as his forces were destroyed. Retreat. All units retreat. But it was too late. Claire had not just disabled the weapons. She had disabled the engines too. The ships were floating dead in space, unable to escape. Alan fought his way through the soldiers until he reached the transport ship that had brought them. He tore the door off its hinges and stepped inside. Morris Cade stood in the cargo bay, a plasma rifle shaking in his hands. "You," Cade whispered. "I killed you. I watched you die." "You did," Alan said, removing his mask so Cade could see his face. "But I came back. And I have spent every day since making sure men like you face justice." "You are a monster," Cade said. "No. I am what the galaxy needs." Alan took a step forward. "You are going to answer for every creature you hurt. Every life you destroyed. Every family you tore apart." Cade fired his rifle. The plasma bolt hit Alan in the chest and burned through his coat. The wound was deep, painful. But it healed in seconds. Alan kept walking. Cade dropped his rifle and fell to his knees. "Please. I will give you money. Anything you want. Just let me go." "I do not want money," Alan said quietly. "I want you to face what you have done." Conservation Corps ships arrived then, responding to Claire's distress signal. They surrounded Cade's disabled fleet and began boarding operations. Soldiers were arrested. Criminals were processed. Justice was finally being served. Claire found Alan standing at the edge of the camp, watching the sunrise. His coat was torn and burned, but he stood tall. "You did it," she said. "You saved them." "We did it," Alan corrected. "I could not have done this alone." "What happens now?" Claire asked. Alan was quiet for a long moment. "For 7 years I have been fighting alone. Hiding in shadows. Running from who I was." He looked at her. "Maybe it is time to stop running?" "The Conservation Corps would be honored to work with you officially," Claire said. "You could keep being the warden. But with support. Resources. A team." "I do not work well with others," Alan said. "You just fought alongside a dozen draconids and trusted a complete stranger to hack enemy ships," Claire pointed out. "I think you work with others better than you know." Alan smiled. It was the first real smile he had managed in years. "Maybe you are right." Isla landed beside him, exhausted but happy. Elder Kor approached with the other draconids. "You fought well, young guardian," the elder said. "You have honored the title we gave you." "I could not have won without you," Alan said. "Thank you for coming." "You are family," Elder Kor said simply. "We will always come when you call." The old Velkarian from the camp approached slowly. "Warden, the refugees want to thank you. Will you speak with them?" Alan looked at the gathered creatures. Families hugging each other. Children playing now that the danger had passed. Old beings weeping with relief. He had saved them. Not alone. But together with others who believed in the same cause. "Yes," Alan said. "I will speak with them." As the sun rose higher, Alan Foster stood surrounded by those he had saved and those who had saved him. He was a guardian. A protector. The warden. But he was also something else now. He was not alone. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Evil would always exist. Innocence would always need protection. But now Alan knew he did not have to face it all by himself. He had Isla, his eternal companion. He had the Draconids, his adopted family. He had Claire and the Conservation Corps, his new allies. Together they would fight. Together they would protect. Together they would make the galaxy a safer place. Alan looked up at the stars, feeling the familiar fire in his chest. The calling of a guardian. But this time it did not feel like a burden. It felt like a purpose. Somewhere out there, innocence needed help. Somewhere out there, creatures faced danger. And now, Alan Foster was ready to answer that call. Not as a ghost. Not as a legend. Not as a monster. But as a guardian who finally understood that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. The warden's watch would continue. But now it was a watch shared by many. And that made all the difference. Isla spread her wings ready to fly. Elder Kor nodded his ancient approval. Claire smiled and began coordinating with her superiors. Alan Foster put his mask back on and looked toward the stars. The galaxy needed him. And this time he was ready. Not just to fight, but to win. Together.